Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we invite guests to share their stories. Hello, I'm Dr. James W. Smith, your host. When you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcast, please consider supporting us with a donation or a monthly contribution as low as $3. If you are viewing or listening to this podcast on YouTube, please subscribe. To all supporters, we say thank you. Be sure to check out my inspiring, encouraging, and transformative books available on Amazon. I'm also available for speaking engagements, so feel free to contact me by way of Facebook, LinkedIn, or my website, www.dealbymepodcast.com. I have with me John Mcmahon, who was in a psychiatric hospital where he was given 6 months to live if he continued to use alcohol and drugs. After getting sober, he returned to his education and earned a degree, then a doctorate in psychology. He then went on to write and teach the largest master's level course in addiction in the United Kingdom. I'm excited to have John come and share with
Thank you.
this podcast today. And so, John, would you share a little bit about yourself and where you are located?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for asking me. I'm excited to be on your show. At the moment, I am sitting in Devon, where this is where I live. Devon being right on the south coast of England. Um, if you are any good at accents, you'll probably have worked out that I'm actually Scottish. But I've lived in England now for about 18 years. With my wife, we run a website called www.bottled-up.com, and this is to help the families of alcoholics because they are poorly served. Most of the services really focus on the drinker, and very little focuses on the family themselves. So, and we come at this from a slightly different angle from most other agencies. So that's what I do now.
Okay.
I used
Okay.
to work in a university, but I've been down here for 18 years and I haven't done that since.
Okay. Well, thank you. I must admit
Yep.
that I've had the opportunity to uh, read your profile, and it was very interesting. You've had a really interesting life, and of course, you are exactly the kind of guest that I love having on
Yeah.
my podcast because
Yeah.
my
And
pod,
interesting is one way of putting it. You know,
yeah,
you know the old saying that for interesting for the Chinese is actually a curse. You know, but
well,
yeah,
well,
an interesting life.
I guess it depends upon how you look at it. See, I've had a very varied life myself, so I
Yes,
kind of I understand exactly where you're coming from.
yeah,
So let me just kind of dive into it a little bit.
sure,
I I noticed that you have written a book, and of course
yep,
we'll talk about that a little bit. But anybody who comes to my show who has written a book, I like to just uh, make sure that they give the name of it, and of course, tell us, why you decided to write it. Will you do that at this time? Because listeners
sure.
on this podcast, would want to know that.
Okay, why did I write a book? That's
Hmm.
a that's a very interesting question, and the answer is not quite straightforward. About 12 years ago, I'd started up this business when I was trying to help businesses to deal with alcohol issues within the workplace. And I don't mean alcoholics; I mean just drinking in general
Hmm.
and how it was losing the money. And that was I wanted to sort of basically make my fortune helping other people. That was the idea,
Okay.
but it wasn't going anywhere.
Hmm.
And as a Christian, I decided that one of the things I should do is I should pray about this and ask for guidance.
Hmm.
And so I was sitting on a bench near where I live. I was out for a walk, And I just thought, okay, this is the time, this is the place. So I started praying.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I heard the voice in my head, write a book.
Mm.
I thought, excuse me, this is not what I came out to ask you about,
Mm-hmm.
but just write a book. And I want you to it to be a book about the life of an ordinary saint.
Mm.
And I thought that's a really odd thing to say. I said,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't see myself as a saint, but if I'm a saint, then why ordinary?
Mm. Okay.
And the answer came back, well, all the saints were ordinary. It was their relationship with me that made them extraordinary.
Mm. You know,
So I then
go
decided
ahead.
to write the book.
Okay. I am very interested in your story because,
Yeah.
I see where you go from look like a trainee priest and you fail at that. Am I correct?
Yes.
You were
Yeah.
there?
In my youth, I was brought up a Catholic, a Roman Catholic, and in Scotland, and I was an altar boy for a while, and I decided, or I felt there was a calling for me to become a priest.
Hmm.
So I went off to, much to my mother's chagrin, because she said I was far too young to make up my mind. But however, I got the bishop to come and sort of strong arm her, so she didn't have much chance there. So I went off to a seminary, and I was there for about 3 years until I became 16. And at the age of 16, my body started to change, my mind started to change, and I thought, I can't see myself being celibate for the rest of my life, and that was that was the end of my ambitions to be the first Scottish Pope.
Oh, wow. This
So
is kind of interesting because as I was reading your story, your profile,
mhm,
it was just so, well, I said interesting, maybe impactful. There are a whole lot of words I could use,
sure,
but that, I saw hippie, I saw
yep,
drug addict, and I
yep,
saw alcoholic.
yep,
All of those are really kind of uh, interesting and varied things that you seem to have gone through. How did you
yeah.
get to where you are now?
Well, I mean, I, I've always been curious, you know.
Hmm.
I'm one of these people. If you go for a walk with me
Hmm.
and we come to a corner, I want to know what's around that corner, you
Okay.
know. For good or ill. you know.
Okay.
So I always wanted to find out a bit more. I grew up in a very small town, and I felt that you know life didn't stop at the town boundary. You know,
Hmm.
there were
Okay.
things happening out there. I was a child of the '60s, and there was a lot happening. And so I decided that I was going to go off and hit the hippie road to the hippie trail to India. That was my idea,
Hmm.
and off I went. And I didn't get to India. I ended up getting sort of waylaid by
Hmm.
various and assorted people and along the way. But I I can't say that I was somebody who fell into the drugs. I didn't fall into the drugs. I jumped into the drugs because that was what was going on at that time. And I
Uh-huh.
thought, I want to know what this is all about.
Uh-huh.
And so I got into drugs, and I drank alcohol, but I was a shy and kind of really a bit introverted.
Hmm.
Um, and so and I also felt that I felt invisible, James. You know,
Okay.
I was an only child. I was brought up as,
Hmm.
so my mother was a working mother, and my father was a working. So I was left alone a lot of the time. And I
Okay.
felt that when I was with people, I didn't really have the social skills, and that I felt invisible. You know, if it was just you and me, it was
Hmm.
fine. If it was
Okay.
you, me, and somebody else, I started to fade into the background. And the more people, the further I went into the background. And that was how it went.
Okay.
And then alcohol. And
Hmm.
alcohol was the great elixir, you know. Alcohol all of a sudden made me interesting. Alcohol, it made me intelligent. It made me funny. It made me, you know, the sort of, the life and soul of every party. It made me God's gift to women. Nobody agreed with any of this, and particularly not the women.
Mm.
But it didn't matter. It's what was in here.
Uh,
It changed how I saw myself. And I loved it. I loved alcohol. Alcohol was never really a problem for me.
mhm.
Alcohol was a solution for me. It was a solution to how I felt.
Okay.
And that's how I kind of got into it.
So when you, as a result of being, this drug addict and
Mhm.
alcoholic,
Yep.
I assume this is when you went into the hospital for,
Yeah, I crashed and burned
okay,
quite badly. What happened was I, that my alcoholism uh, got worse and worse. It was okay at the
yeah,
beginning. I
okay,
could function and it was all
mm,
right.
okay,
I could go to work. I could hold down a job. I worked in a psychiatric hospital, and I was in charge of the drug cupboard, which was,
okay,
um, and for me, I used the drug cupboard like a pick and mix. I was sort of, I'll have one of them and two of them, and so I used to go home with a bag of drugs every night. And the things that they were giving to, um, people with psychosis, I was eating them. So
okay,
I would take them when I couldn't drink,
uh-huh,
and I would take them when I was drinking. So it just got worse and worse and worse. I was also using, other illicit drugs as well,
mm,
into opiates and things, and and after a while, I was functioning less and less. I was married, and my wife she stood it for about 10 years and then just couldn't stand it any longer. And one
okay,
day she said to me, I'm leaving you. I don't love you anymore. I don't like you anymore. And I'm leaving before I hate you.
okay. So
And off
it,
she went.
okay,
Oh,
so it was there at the psychiatric hospital
yeah.
that you got the word that if you kept on doing what you were doing, that you would live 6 months.
Well,
Is
what happened was that I was working and I went into the DTs.
okay.
You know what I mean by the DTs? Which is a severe alcohol withdrawal, which is hallucinations, shaking,
Yeah,
sweating,
yeah.
convulsions.
Mm,
And the DTs can actually be fatal. And
mm,
what they did was they sent me to another hospital.
okay,
And this other hospital took me and they sedated me. And the psychiatrist there said, if you continue to take alcohol and drugs, you'll be dead in 6 months. You have liver damage, you have brain damage. You will be dead in 6 months. And
so so
mhm,
John, let me just jump in one moment. So I
sure,
assume it was as a result of what they told you at the hospital
no,
and your fear of dying that
no,
somehow you came to your senses and say, look, I can't continue doing this. Is that a pretty accurate statement, or is there something in between
no,
that?
no. It's a fair assumption,
Okay.
but it's wrong.
Oh,
It's wrong.
okay.
It's
Okay.
most people make that assumption that's
o-
what I'm not saying it had nothing to do with my change,
Okay.
um, but that was not what changed me because at that time I would quite happily have died. You
Oh,
know,
okay. Okay.
I would quite happily have not woken up as
Mm.
long as I went. As long as I
Um,
was drunk, I would be
Makes
fine.
sense. I hear you. Makes sense. I know exactly where
Yeah.
you're coming from. Okay. All right.
What what made the big change was looking in the mirror and seeing this thing that was looking back at me.
Mm.
This thing that would tramp over the top of anybody to get a drink. This thing that was just so selfish. I
Mm.
couldn't care less for anybody as long as I had a drink or drugs in my hand.
Mm.
And I thought, I'm better than that. There was a
Okay.
little voice way, way inside me that said, you're better than that, you
Mm.
know? And it was that made me change because I
Wow.
did not want to be that person anymore.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. I can feel that. I know
Hmm.
exactly where you are. Um, John, um, my podcast is about encouraging, inspiring, and
Yeah,
transforming.
sure.
And I don't know, maybe I should ask you it this way. Uh,
Mhm.
what would you say to someone who has fallen into addiction and more particularly now in recovery? What would you say to them? You know, you seem to be somebody who has made it through. You,
Yeah,
you've gotten to the other end,
yeah,
and so can you share some encouraging word to somebody who maybe listen to this podcast, you know, or will read your book and
yeah,
and look, they want to get to the other side.
yeah. Well, for me, getting into alcohol and drugs was a choice.
Okay.
It's a choice. I became a binge drinker. And, I didn't drink all the time. I didn't take drugs all the time. I would go a couple of months. So there was a choice every time I started in a binge.
Okay. Hmm.
When I stopped drinking, I had a choice, and that choice was live, not live, you know,
Hmm.
live differently or not live differently. What I did at that time was I decided that I did not want to be that person anymore. And I would do anything to not be that person anymore.
Okay.
So I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous. I hated Alcoholics Anonymous with a passion. Um, and I did not want to be there. I thought I was better than them, you know.
Hmm.
I looked down my nose at them. That's part of the it was part of the sickness. Um, Ultimately, I needed them and they saved my life, But it took a while for me to get there. I went to this other group, which was run by the hospital. I would listen to anybody that would help me. I locked myself up. I would go and when the pubs were open, I would not go near anything. I did anything I could. In Alcoholics Anonymous, eventually, I started to see that these guys had a solution,
Hmm.
and I didn't have it, and I needed them. I began to need them, so I needed a bit of humility, you know.
Hmm.
And humility was not something I had in abundance,
Hmm.
particularly when I was drinking.
Hmm.
I didn't have it.
I got it.
And I was frightened. I was very, very frightened. I used to have panic attacks.
Hmm.
And one night changed everything that was. In Alcoholics Anonymous, they have a program, and it's a 12-step program. The first step is powerless over alcohol, and that allows it to become unmanageable. The second one is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I thought, whoa. You see, although I had been, I'd been training to be a priest, I'd gone away from all of that. I didn't believe in it anymore. I didn't believe that God even believed in me anymore. Never mind,
Hmm.
I believed in him.
Hmm.
So I wasn't really that interested. Done it. I'd also dabbled in other religions as well. So I mean, I really wasn't interested in the God thing. And and then the third step was handed my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him to be.
Hmm.
And again, people in Alcoholics Anonymous kept saying to me, you need to do this. And I'm going, nope. I was 3 months that I hadn't had a drink. And there was this night, and I had been to 3 meetings that day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, one in the evening. That's how much I was trying. And it's still, my head was scrambled. Still, I had this fear. Still, I was desperate for a drink. And I did something that I hadn't done for a long time. I prayed, James. It wasn't a long prayer. It
Hmm.
wasn't an elaborate one, but it's probably the most fervent and honest prayer in my life. 3 words: God, help me. And I sat back and I waited. Fiery chariot would be nice, thank you very much. Choir of angels, voice, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Next day, I was at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and I was talking to this old timer in Alcoholics Anonymous, somebody with a lot of wisdom. And I said to him, look, I did this and nothing happened. And he said, did you sleep last night? I said, yeah. He said, did you have a drink last night? I said, no. He said, have you had a drink today? And I said, no. He said, do you feel like a drink today? And I went, no. And I haven't for 40 years. 40 years, I have not needed a drink. And I was looking for a big, elaborate sort of, big signs, show me something dramatic. And it came not in a shout, but in a whisper. And that was it. And it was removed. I never to this day needed a drink. I'm not saying I haven't had difficult times. I have.
I got you.
And,
I hear you
yeah.
100%. I could tell you my story, John, because you're right in my line, and
Yep.
it's amazing just listening to your story and
Yeah.
how you got to where you are. Listeners, don't go to place. I need to ask John something else, and I want you all to hear it. So, John, I know you wrote a book, so could you share with listeners a little bit about uh, where they can get your book, and of
Sure.
course, a little bit of, where they can learn a little bit more about you. If you got a website or what have you. Could you share that with them?
Okay, I wrote the book, and that was a fascinating experience. And I didn't really know why I was writing the book, but
Okay.
I found out later. And what it allowed me to do is start and put the pieces together and start and see the connections.
Okay.
And one of the things that I found with that book is that that a poem, "The Footsteps."
Mm-mm.
No, where it's the footsteps are about the man walking along the beach,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
you see
Yeah, I know
the
you're
two
talking.
steps of,
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel looking back in that poem
Hmm.
could be my book,
Okay.
because that's what it was like. It
Okay.
was the faithfulness of God during that
Oh,
time.
okay.
And you know, and it allowed me to start and put all the connections together. But there's a lot of things that went into me becoming an alcoholic. And there was a lot of things going into me, stopping being an alcoholic. The book's called "No Cloistered Life."
No, what?
As in cloistered life.
Okay. Oh,
As in an abbey. It was,
I got it.
um, and it's sort of the idea of cloistered has been hidden away from the world.
Yeah, no, I got you.
But I wasn't. I was I was right in the middle of the world.
Right.
And it's in Amazon. You can get it in Kindle, and you can buy it in a paperback. And
Okay.
it's got some very good reviews.
Okay.
Very good reviews.
All right.
There's also the website that is bottled up, which is bottled-up.com.
Okay.
We use that particular title for the simple reason that that's what tends to happen with families, is they don't talk about the issues.
Mm-hmm.
They bottle things up.
Okay.
So, and it was a pun with the bottle.
All right.
So that
Okay.
was that.
I got you. All right.
But the other thing I would say about getting, changing, is that you need to work at it. It doesn't just come, delivered from Amazon, and wrapped up in a nice parcel. You have to get out there and do things. And that was one of the things I did,
Okay.
is that I thought, well, there's lots and lots of things that I sat in pubs in Glasgow saying I would do tomorrow. I said that I'll climb the mountains tomorrow. Today I'm drinking, so I'm busy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to scuba dive. I want to sail around the Greek. I've done all of that now. I did all of that because I went out and I put myself out there, and I did that curiosity never went away.
Okay.
It just changed. I still want to know what's around the corner, James.
Okay.
Still want to know what's around there. I want to try it. But one of the things that I did, and I did this for me, was I went back to education, because I left school with practically nothing. And I went back and I got a degree, and then I got a doctorate, and then I went on and did taught in university. But I did that for me
Well,
because I thought, I, I know I'm bright, I know I'm clever, but I've just been very, very lazy and never wanted to do anything with it.
mhm.
So now I want to go back and prove it to myself as much as
Well,
to anybody else.
John, I really admire you for where
Hmm.
how you got to where you are, and that a lot of persons that I've interviewed, those are some of the best stories. When to, you've gone through this or you've gone through that, and somehow you have overcome, and in many cases, you have defied the odds because many people would not have thought that you would have gotten to where you are. And when I see where you are,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
teaching, the largest master's level course in
Yeah.
addiction, at the UK. That's very, very, very powerful. One more question I need to ask you before we close out is
Okay, just
could
before
you
you do,
just
can I just say something about that?
yeah,
Can I
sure.
say that most of my life after I got sober, I wanted to get away from anything to do with alcohol.
Okay.
I didn't want to be teaching a course in alcohol. I thought I'd done enough. But every time I moved away from it, the doors shut. And every time I moved towards it, the doors opened.
Hmm.
It was, you know, something was guiding me,
Yeah.
something was guiding me to where I want to go.
I,
So
c-
I just wanted to say that.
yeah, I can believe that.
Wasn't my choice.
Yeah, I understand that. So could you talk about how the lowest times in our lives can become our most powerful assets? And make it as
Yeah.
brief as you can because time is getting away
Okay.
from us.
Okay. I think at the lowest times, you have a choice. You have a
Okay.
choice in that moment. Um, you can either give in or you can change. You
Hmm.
know? And I felt that at that time I had nothing left to lose,
Okay.
but I had just about everything to gain.
Hmm.
And I think it's the choice you make in that moment. But it's also about the people that you meet in that moment. When I was in the psychiatric hospital and I went into the DTs, I was sitting with the head of the hospital and I said, I'm just a hopeless case. And he said, and he said, you may be a hopeless case, but you're not a lost cause.
Hmm.
And that was such a powerful statement that I was in such a bad way. I still remember those words.
Hmm.
And it was as if he just planted this seed in my brain. He planted it there. And we need people like that. We need people who will encourage us,
I agree.
you know,
I agree with
and
you.
we need the humility to ask. We
Mhm.
need the humility to say, I need your help. Could you
Right.
help me?
Yeah. John, this has been an awesome interview. I really
Mm.
appreciate you talking to us and
It's been a pleasure.
definitely coming on the Deal by Me podcast. You've been a great guest and thank you so much. Don't forget to go back to Pod Match, okay? And
Yeah.
we just want to make certain that things continue to go well for you, and I know they will because
Thank you.
you're just awesome, awesome. And so, thank you so very much. And John McMahon sharing with us today. And until next time, peace and blessings be with each of you.